Both Colonel Vindman and Ms. Williams were on the July 25th call. Vindman testified that due to the unequal bargaining position of the two leaders and Ukraine's dependency on the U.S., the favor Trump asked of Zelensky was really a demand. After the call, multiple individuals, including Vindman, were concerned enough to report it to the National Security Council's top lawyer. It was the second time in 2 weeks that Vindman had raised concerns with NSC lawyers.
After trying out several different accusations against President Trump, the Democrats have recently settled on bribery. According to widespread reports, they replaced their quid pro quo allegation because it wasn't polling well.
I'm grateful to for my father's brave act of hope 40 years ago and for the privilege of being an American citizen and public servant, where I can live free of fear for mine and my family's safety. Dad, I'm sitting here today in the U.S. Capitol talking to our elected professionals is proof that you made the right decision 40 years ago to leave the Soviet Union and come here to the United States of America in search of a better life for our family. Do not worry. I will be fine for telling the truth.
About 2 weeks after that July 10th meeting, President Trump and President Zelensky had their second call, the now infamous July 25th call. Colonel Vindman, what was your real-time reaction to hearing that call?
Chairman, without hesitation, I knew that I had to report this to the White House counsel. I had concerns, and it was my duty to report my concerns to the proper people in the chain of command.
Was there any ambiguity about the President's use of the word Biden?
There was not.
It was pretty clear that the President wanted Zelensky to commit to investigating the Bidens, was it not?
That is correct.
That is one of the favors that you thought should be properly characterized as a demand?
That is correct.
And there's no ambiguity about that?
In my mind, there was not.
And Colonel, you never leaked information?
I never did, never would. That is preposterous that I would do that.
Okay. Your boss had concerns about your judgment. Your former boss, Dr. Hill, had concerns about your judgment. Your colleagues had concerns about your judgment. And your colleagues felt that there were times when you leaked information. Any idea why they have those impressions, Colonel Vindman?
Yes, Representative Jordan. I guess I'll start by reading Dr. Hill's own words, as she attested to in my last evaluation that was dated middle of July, right before she left. Alex is a top 1% military officer and the best Army officer I've worked with in my 15 years of government service.
Mr. Vindman, you testified in your deposition that you did not know the whistleblower.
Ranking member, it's Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, please.
Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, you testified in the deposition that you did not know who the whistleblower was, or is.
I do not know who the whistleblower is. That is
so how is it possible for you to name these people and then out the whistleblower?
Per the advice of my counsel, I've been advised not to answer specific questions about members of the intelligence community.
Are you aware that this is the Intelligence Committee that's conducting an impeachment hearing?
Of course I am.
Wouldn't the appropriate place for you to come to testify would be the Intelligence Committee about someone within the intelligence community?
Ranking member, per the advice of my counsel and the instructions from the chairman, I've been advised not to provide any specifics on who I have spoken to inside the intelligence community. What I can offer is that these were properly cleared individuals, or was a properly cleared individual with a need to know.
Well, this is, I mean, you can plead the fifth, but you're here to answer questions, and you're here under subpoena. So you can either answer the question or you can plead the fifth.
Throughout this time, I understood that there was an important distinction between Burisma and Biden, and I urged the Ukrainians to maintain such a distinction. I did not know that President Trump or others had raised Vice President Biden with the Ukrainians, or had conflated the investigation of possible Ukrainian corruption with investigation of the former vice president. In retrospect, for the Ukrainians, it would clearly have been confusing. In hindsight, I now understand that others saw the idea of investigating possible corruption involving the Ukrainian company Burisma as equivalent to investigating former Vice President Biden. I saw them as very different, the former being appropriate and unremarkable, the latter being unacceptable. In retrospect, I should have seen that connection differently, and had I done so, I would have raised my own objections.
Mr. Zeldin asked you in the deposition that in no way, shape, or form, in either readouts from the United States or Ukraine, did you receive any indication whatsoever for anything that resembled a quid pro quo. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the same would go for this new allegation of bribery?
I've only seen an allegation of bribery in the last week.
It's the same common set of facts. It's just instead of quid pro quo, now it's bribery.
I was never involved in anything that I considered to be bribery at all.
Okay, or extortion?
Or extortion.
Okay.
I do remember having seen some of the testimony of Mr. Kent, a conversation in which he had asked me about the conspiracy theories that were out there in Ukraine. I don't remember what the date of this conversation was. And my view was, well, if there are things like that, then why not investigate them? I don't believe that there's anything to them. If there is, 2016 election interference is what I was thinking of. We would want to know about that, but I didn't really believe there's anything there to begin with.
You testified in your deposition to the extent the Ukrainians were going to investigate other Ukrainians for wrongdoing, that was perfectly appropriate in your mind?
Correct. That has been U.S. policy for years.
So if certain Ukrainians involved with the Burisma company,
that I think is the only plausible thing to look at there. As I said, I don't find it plausible or credible that Vice President Biden would have been influenced in his duties, but whether individual Ukrainians in the society that we know Ukraine has been for decades were trying to act in a corrupt way or to buy influence, that's plausible.